Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is my first Wellness Trails event, so looking forward to presenting and trying to answer some questions and provide you some insight on maintaining muscle mass and potentially gaining strength as we age. So these numbers are a little bit off. This is from a 2010 census, so I would imagine that 13% is really closer to about 15, 16% of the current U.S. population that exceeds the age of 65. And with our population, that breaks up or turns into about 50 million U.S. Americans are above the age of 65. Now that is male and female. I know it's not quite as specific to this group as our last presentation, but that's a large number of people. So if we look down at the next bullet, 60%, so over half, that works out to be about 30 million of those 50 million people do not engage in physical activity on a regular basis. With the most common form of recreational exercise as, especially in this part of the country, in the summer, gardening, yard work, and walks. That's a little bit different regionally. If you live in Arizona or Florida or California, you're obviously able to exercise and be outdoors and do something like that a little bit more frequently throughout the year. So in this area especially, we have to realize that there are facilities and fitness locations that can help us to maintain muscle mass and gain as we age. So we have this peak window, the ages between 20 and 40, where we are at our physical peak. We want to take advantage of that. And if we don't, unfortunately, that puts us at a, not a loss, but taking a couple steps back from those who were physically active in these younger years. So we have a small window to really take advantage of. I apologize there. So concentric strength, which I will get into more in a bit, is one of the types of contractions that we will need to work on to maintain that muscle mass. It declines slowly at first, but more rapidly as we age, and I think that has to do with a lot of what our last speaker had talked about with the decline in the androgen and testosterone hormones. Looking down now, arm strength tends to deteriorate more slowly than leg strength, and that is related to our leisure activities. What do we do when we're not at work or golfing or doing what it is? Typically tend to sit, and our hobbies become more sedentary. So the leg strength is a big thing we need to push to prevent those falls, to prevent any catastrophic events from happening. And then strength loss relates to a limited mobility and fitness status, which again leads to the potential for falls. Winter's coming up, icy, snowy, cold, which unfortunately increases those incidences once again. So these are numbers from the American College of Sports Medicine. They recommend an average of 2.5 hours a week of moderate intensity, and that is aerobic, which we're not going to touch on too much, but the aerobic and then just over an hour of resistance training, vigorous physical activity. What's nice about these is that it doesn't have to be all or none. You don't have to do an hour and a quarter twice a week. It breaks up into it's cumulative. The effects of exercise add up throughout the day. So if you do a little here, a little there, you'll end up getting that hour and a quarter fairly easily, as long as we don't let that sedentary lifestyle take over. And then the difference between adults and older adults really breaks up into the 40 to 60 versus the 60 to 80. But the guidelines don't change all that much as long as you're physically able to tolerate that kind of exercise.
That 1.25 hours of vigorous physical activity, that's also per week?
Yes, yes, yes. So these are different types of training. I'll get to cardiovascular first just because I'm going to be spending less time on that. But the cardiovascular exercise just breaks down into getting your heart going, getting it pumping above that resting heart rate level. The cardiovascular fitness is big in keeping you healthy, obviously. And then we have the other two, the isometric and isotonic. And just to kind of go over what those are, it'd be easier to look. So here, if we think of the isometric, Isometric means maintaining a certain degree of joint motion. So if you look at a bicep curl, something from that full extension to a full flexion, an isometric would be holding anywhere in those ranges. So if you pull down with a resistance or holding a weight, that 90 degrees is where we're strongest in our biceps. So that holding of the weight at that position would be considered an isometric. Muscle is contracting, but joint is not moving. Then if we go down to the isotonic, the concentric and eccentric is more what we think of when we think of exercise. The concentric is when the muscle is actively shortening, the work part of the exercise of what we think about. So going from the extended position through to the flex position. The up motion of that is considered the concentric part of the exercise, and that's where we gain a good amount of the muscle size. The eccentric part is equally, if not more, important. So that part of the exercise will be going from the shortened position to the lengthened position. That control, it's not your tricep pushing down, but it's your bicep slowly releasing, acting like a brake to bring you back into that lengthened position. Now that is where we're going to gain the strength and the endurance of the muscle. So if you've ever worked out, that's the part of the exercise that you'll feel that muscle burn. And that was particularly important. We want that eccentric to be slow, controlled, so we don't only have that speed, but that active lengthening rather. So the benefits of resistance training. Why should we even do this? What's the point? Here are a couple big ones, my favorites. So muscle strength and endurance will increase, obviously. We won't see a change immediately. You can't go to the gym or start working out and expect, why am I not stronger? Or why do my muscles not look larger? So the muscle strength and endurance, that change happens slowly. After about 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, we'll start to notice some kind of change, and that change is all neurologic. So the connection from our brains to our muscles becomes stronger, so more muscle fibers are able to be recruited, and you're physically able to lift more weight. You should notice that within a month or so, although you might not look any larger, which brings us to the next bullet point. The fiber size and the type of fibers will also increase. So that is when the cross-sectional area, the diameter of the muscle, will begin to increase. So it will supplement that first part. The neurologic changes is now supplemented with a physical change. You'll see changes. The next one down is the connective tissue integrity. Now, if we think of bone as a connective tissue, most people don't think of connective tissue as bone because that's our skeleton, but that is part of the connective tissue system. Just like muscle, bone reacts well to resistance training. It takes about 10% of the fracture force to gain bone integrity. So by resistance training, your muscles are pulling on the bone, the body reacts to that, and it lays down more calcium, more osteoblastic activity, so your bones will become stronger with lifting weights. So it's more than just muscle that we're changing, which helps out. If there were an instance of a fall, you want strong bones to try to prevent any kind of fracture. And that last point there is a decreased body fat and an increase in fat-free mass. So we don't trade fat for muscle, which would be fantastic, but what happens is the muscle mass grows, muscle burns calorie, fat does not, so there's kind of a twofold swing. You're building muscle, and now that muscle is taking care of burning calories, you're expending energy to continue on with that. So you're losing weight as you gain, you may be gaining weight, but it's a good weight. You're just swapping them out. So how do you build muscle? How do I go from lifting X amount of weight or pounds to X plus 10 pounds? It gets back to that eccentric activity. It's one thing just to lift a muscle up, or to lift a weight up, but now lowering it slowly is where that time under tension, you're stressing your muscles in a different way. You're able to tolerate a much larger force on the down than on the way up. A lot of people you'll see cheating. They'll be throwing their bodies in one way or another to try to get weight up. But now we got to lower it. We got to control it slowly. And that's where we're going to see that increase in strength. So preparing for your workout, do you just want to get to the gym and get rolling? But that's not always the greatest idea. You want to prepare yourself. You want to get ready. You wouldn't go out on a sub-zero day, start your car and roll on the road. It's going to make some noises. It's not going to be as responsive. It's not going to be quite ready. So think of your body like that. We need to prepare yourself mentally and physically with dynamic stretching, static stretching. A general warm-up is great. It's hopping on a bike for 10 minutes. It's hopping on an elliptical for 10 minutes. Just get your joints loose, get rolling, get moving, and everything will go a little bit smoother later on. The mental part is a big component of the warm-up as well. You don't want to go into the gym thinking about what's recording on the TV in at home, or the bill I've got setting up. You want to be sure you're in the moment. You are able to determine what your body feels like while you're lifting, while you're exercising, so you can pay attention to that and you don't increase the risk for injury while trying to make yourself better. And then the specific part of the warm-up. What's your plan for that day? Are you going to be working on your back or your shoulders or your legs? If you're going to be doing one body part, you don't want to spend too much of the specific part of the warm-up working on arm circles or high knees or what it is. We want to make sure our bodies are ready to accept the range of motion and movement that we're going to use for the big part of the workout. So again, preparing for your workout. What do we need to know going into it? Too many times we see people red in the face and holding the breath and struggling to push a weight that's probably too heavy for them, really. But breathing is a huge part we need to focus on. Breathing is not optional. Exhaling during the work part as the push or on the pull, and then with the eccentric part, the controlling the weight back down, is when you want to breathe in. Breathing is incredibly important because it regulates blood pressure during exercise. Too many times people will hold their breath and you'll see a big drop in their blood pressure. Exhaling on the work part, inhaling on the recovery part is a great way to think about it. Checking body alignment. So this gets into the joint health. Our joints are meant to move in certain directions. We want to make sure we're allowing them to do that. If we stress the ligaments and cartilage and everything that's there to support you instead of the muscle, we're going to end up damaging and doing some setbacks. We don't want that. So making sure that you are upright, your shoulders are drawn back, your head is above your shoulders to get the most out of the exercise without creating any additional problems. The middle there, using a spotter. You got to leave your ego aside when you're doing something like this, especially if you're new to exercise. A spotter is a great person to have to give you assistance if you need it. So if you're underneath a bar, especially doing a push press or a chest press, the last thing we want is for that weight to go down and now I can't push it back up. What do I do? So a spotter is a great way to stay motivated, to stay safe, to keep focus on the exercise. And then those last two kind of go hand in hand. Thinking functionally and what are your goals? Why are you there? What's the reason you are here to work out? Is it just to feel safer, to be able to lift that bag of mulch, to be able to climb a ladder, to stay in your home? Is that an issue? So thinking functionally and what are your goals? What do you hope to achieve from exercise? Because I think these two will really help you stay motivated. If you know that I've got to be able to do this in 6 months, how do I get there? All right, so now's kind of the fun part. So let's have everyone stand up and we'll go over some of these larger muscle group exercises as a way to look at our body mechanics. How do we do something like this? So here's an abbreviated list of some of the multi-angle large muscle group exercises that we can typically design our exercise program around. So squat, lunge, our great lower body, hit a lot of stuff. Well, the others kind of work on everything from legs to torso to arms. So with the squat, A couple things to keep in mind are, where do I put my legs? Should I stay narrow? Should I stay wide? Shoulder width is a great thing to think about. So if we take a shoulder width stance with our legs, and isn't it just sitting down and standing up? Not quite. Now we got to think about butt position, knee position, chest position. So to keep knees and hips healthy, to keep them working where they should be, think about pushing your butt backwards instead of dropping down. So by pushing your butt back, your knees stay behind your toes, and then squeezing your cheeks to get you back up instead of rocking forward. So that gives you the glutes, some quads, some calves. It really works a lot of things. So keeping in mind, butt back, chest high, knees behind your toes, and then squeeze cheeks to get you back up. So with any of these exercises, you could use a cable system. You could use a resistance bands. You could use a barbell, dumbbells. There's tons of variability for these kinds of exercises. So if we look at the next one down, another lower extremity exercise would be a lunge. In my opinion, my favorite lower body exercise because it hits everything hard. So with the lunge, maybe a little bit difficult to do here, we may have to turn to the side, but thinking about a large step. Again, thinking about keeping knee, hip joints healthy, the larger the step, the more comfortable it will be. So with this one, the front lower leg needs to stay pretty much perpendicular to the ground. So at about a 90-degree angle from your foot, too far forward, and you're going to feel it in your knee, too far back, and you're going to be tipping backwards. So with a large step, thinking about your knee position in that front leg, you're essentially dropping straight down. So think of an anchor pulling you to the ground, bending your back knee, and then standing up. This one you will feel more in the front of the leg versus the back of the leg with the squat. Squeezing to standing up. So this is an up-down motion similar to the squat, but hitting different muscle groups. So the next couple, row, push press, shoulder press, you have the option to sit, you have the option to stand because they are pretty much excluding the legs. With a row, it's a pitch forward of the hips, not of the back. I don't know if everyone can see here, but to keep the back healthy, a lot of people will tend to do this on a bench. So raising up a bench at an inclined angle, now you're supporting yourself so you don't have to worry, well, what position is my back in? But if you are not using a bench, how do you do it? So thinking about the hip angle now, again, like the squat, pushing the butt back to create that forward lean, and then with a bar, bands, dumbbells, you're pulling your elbows just up to your sides. What's great about these exercises is they are all over the YouTube. If you see this list and like, oh, what did he say? What do we got to do? They're straightforward, and you can look it up, and there's plenty of videos, pictures, and everything to keep you on it. But again, pushing the butt back, keeping a spine neutral position, you'd just be pulling a weight up towards your torso. Now with that fourth one here, it's called a push press, chest press, bench press. 3 different words for the same thing. It's essentially using now pec instead of lower body. But again, with a bench, you can change the position. You can do a straight flat. You could do it at an incline. If you feel comfortable, some benches go at a decline, so now you're hanging at an upside down angle. There's just important to think about body position. We would never want to go elbows past our chest. We're going to think about shoulder injuries and potential tears that could happen. So really, at a 90-degree angle is all you need. Dropping shoulders just to the side, so your wrists are always above shoulder height. We would never need to squeeze back here, but from straight out from your torso and up. Now there are machines that also do this, which put you in that position, which is fantastic if you are wary or unsure how to achieve this with free weights. And then last but not least, I think causes the most amount of problems is a shoulder press. Our shoulders are great. They're built for mobility. Unfortunately, we have to sacrifice a little stability for that. So some people will really try to put up too much weight, or they'll throw it at an odd angle, and then we come up with some rotator cuff tears or bursitis or just rotator cuff pathology. So the biggest thing to think about in a shoulder press is I like to consider hand position, thinking always thumbs up. So if your thumbs would ever be considered in that downward position, we're rotating here too much. This internal rotation can tend to create some discrepancies for structures that should be moving. So thinking that thumb up position, palms would always be facing each other or slightly back. So this would be more difficult to do with a straight bar here, but if you're using dumbbells or cables or elastic, thinking thumbs backwards, palms in, or palms back to keep the shoulders healthy, to keep them out of that impingement position. So those are the bigger lifts we would consider them, multi-joint, multi-facet exercises. So we can go ahead and take a seat there, but we can go over those later again if anyone has any questions. And then getting on to the accessory group exercises. These would be less functional in terms of lifting that bag of mulch or climbing the ladder or doing the heavy work, but they are just as important to think about. They isolate certain muscles instead of going at a, say, legs versus arms. They are now biceps versus triceps versus quads. So again, an abbreviated list, but it's still important to think about body position and even do you need a spotter for these kind of things? So using a weight that you feel like you could get 8 to 10 to 12 repetitions with without being absolutely fatigued at that last go. And then the core. You know, we'd all like to look like Mr. Ryan Terry, Mr. Olympia here, but is it functional? Is it realistic? Preparing for a show is one thing, but we are looking to stay healthy, to stay active, to keep doing what we need to do. So in function, thinking about core exercises, planking is a great option. It keeps spine neutral. It's not rocking forward or rocking back. It's again that isometric contraction that I touched upon. It's keeping everything still and holding for a period of 5 to 10 to 30 seconds to make that isometric strength. Knee lifts, leg lifts, so supporting your upper body and now bringing your lower body up. Again, it's a functional thing. We're walking all day long. We're bringing our legs and knees high, and we don't think about using our abs for anything like that. But if you did not have that core strength, we would just fall right into our lower body. So leg lifts and knee lifts are a great option. You could do them standing, just like a standing march. Think about breathing out as your leg comes up, or supporting on like a dip machine, now bringing either one or both of the extremities up towards your midsection. Third one down now, crunches are one of my least favorite exercises to have people do because of the position it puts your back in. We live in a forward flexed world, whether we're sitting or typical position for sleeping is on your side in more of a fetal position with that spine curved. So crunches aren't my favorite, but again, we're looking to get those ab muscles active, and what do? They pull you in that forward direction. And then lastly, building them into your main set. I had talked about breathing. It's important that exhale is what creates that rigidity, that brace for your midsection. It's meant to provide stability all day long while you're upright, whether you're doing something functional, whether you're doing something that requires strength. But creating that body-like corset, rather, to keep everything tight, to keep everything stable while extremities are moving.